All right, let's dive into a massive challenge that pretty much every business faces. How do you actually understand and manage risk? For years, it's been all about endless spreadsheets and just gut feelings. Well, we're going to blow that up. Today, we're breaking down how a modern, data-driven approach can take all that chaos and turn it into a crystal clear strategy. Let's see how it works. So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the classic spreadsheet problem. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how you can literally give risk a score. From there, we'll see how those scores build a strategy, and then, the fun part, visualize that whole landscape. Finally, we'll see how this clarity helps us find problems we never knew we had, and how it's creating a whole new era for auditing. First things first, let's talk about the old way. For as long as I can remember, risk assessment meant someone was stuck digging through these gigantic, super complicated spreadsheets. You know the ones. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It's slow, it's painful, and you're never really truly sure you found everything. And this slide just lays it all out, the before and after. On the left, that's the old world, slow, manual, and just begging for a typo to throw the whole thing off and hide some major risks. But on the right, that's where we're headed. We're talking automated data workflows that are fast, consistent, and repeatable. The goal here is to stop hunting for hidden risks and instead get clear, visual insights. So, how do we actually make that leap? Well, the very first step, and this is a big one, is to stop talking about risk with vague feelings like, oh, this feels kind of risky, and start turning those feelings into cold, hard numbers. And the way we do that is with something called a risk score. Now, it sounds a little technical, but it's actually a beautifully simple idea. It's just a single number that tells you how severe a risk really is. And the magic, well, it's all in how you calculate it. And check this out. The formula is so simple. You just ask two questions. First, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely is this thing to happen? And second, on that same scale, what's the impact if it actually does happen? You multiply those two numbers together, and boom, that's your risk score. So, a super likely event, a 5, with a massive impact, another 5, that gets you a 25. That's as bad as it gets. This little calculation is the engine for this entire process. So inside an analytics tool, the first few steps look just like this. You pull in your raw data, that's your risk register, then you apply that simple likelihood times impact formula to every single item on the list. And just like that, you've started to turn a boring list into real strategic intelligence. Okay, so now every single risk has a number attached to it. That means we can stop looking at them one by one. The next step is to use that score to automatically sort them into buckets that actually mean something, and even suggest a strategy. The tool we use for this is called a rule engine. Now, that sounds way more complicated than it is. It really just works on simple if this, then that logic that you get to define. So for example, you can tell it, hey, if a risk score is 15 or higher, then I want you to automatically label that risk as high. It's automation at its simplest, and honestly, it's most powerful. And here you can see those rules in action. A score of 15 or more, that gets labeled high risk, and the suggested response is to avoid it altogether. Scores in that medium range, well, maybe you try to reduce them or share them. And anything 6 or below is a low risk, where the right strategy is probably just to accept it. Think about it. A machine can apply this logic to thousands of risks in just seconds. Okay, so we've calculated, we've classified, and this is where it gets really, really good. We're about to take all those numbers and rules and turn them into a single, clear picture that literally anyone can understand in a glance. But that kind of brings up a question, right? You've got all these different risks floating around. Operational, compliance, strategic. How on earth can you see them all at once without your brain just melting? And the answer is by creating what's called a risk matrix. Just think of it like a single interactive map of your company's entire universe of risk. And here's the cheat sheet for how to read that map. The line across the bottom, the x-axis, that's likelihood. The line going up the side, the y-axis, that's impact. The bigger the bubble, the higher the total risk score. And the color tells you everything at a glance. Red is high, yellow is medium, green is low. So what are you looking for? Your eyes should go straight to the top right corner. The big red bubbles there, those are your top priorities. And visualization isn't just about one master chart either. You can also whip up these really simple summaries, like this bar chart here. In an instant, you can see if most of your risks are, say, operational, or if you have a big compliance problem. It gives you that 30,000-foot view in seconds. But here's the most important point, really. The true power of this entire process isn't just seeing the risks. It's about using this new clean data to ask much deeper, much more critical questions about your actual strategy. And probably the most important question you can ask is this one. Is the way we plan to handle a risk actually the right response for how severe that risk is? Is there a mismatch? And this is where it all pays off. We can now group our risks by their level and their planned response. So we see 5 high risks are set to be avoided. Okay, that makes perfect sense. But hang on, look at that second line. We have 2 high severity risks where the planned response is to accept it. That is a massive red flag. I mean, this is exactly the kind of insight that's almost impossible to spot when you're buried in a spreadsheet, but it just jumps right off the page with data analysis. Like the source material says, a high risk should rarely be accepted. Finding this kind of mismatch is exactly what an internal auditor or a manager needs to be able to do. And that really brings us to the big picture here. This isn't just some neat trick for auditors to use. No, this represents a really fundamental shift in how businesses can operate, period. It's all about moving away from decisions that are based on gut feelings and instincts and moving towards decisions based on actual evidence. It's about empowering people across the organization to use data to make their companies safer, more efficient, and at the end of the day, just plain smarter. So let's just quickly recap the key takeaways here. We've seen how automation can turn these slow, manual headaches into fast, reliable workflows. We saw that by quantifying risk, we create objective data we can actually analyze. Then, visualization makes all that complex data easy for anyone to get. And most importantly, this whole process lets us finally test whether our strategies are actually connected to reality. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This whole process, it's really just about asking better questions of your data. So the real takeaway is this. What hidden risks, or hey, what hidden opportunities, are just sitting inside your organization's data right now, waiting for you to ask the right question?